Well, good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody today? Can everybody hear me? Pull the shade down. This has more than one moving part. I don't know if I'm qualified for this. How's that? Is that better? All the way. Okay. Did I do good? Is that good? Why does that need to be down?
I don't know.
Oh, it glares. I don't have anything for here, but that's good, yeah. I didn't have.
See you clearer this way.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Should I put that one down too? Oh, all right. Well, my name is Quentin Brunzold, and I'm just happy to be here. This is about 2 years in the making of coming to speak to the Senior Center, so I'm happy to be here. 2020, I actually was working with Barb to try to come and visit with you, and there was something that happened that year. Yeah. Remember that? We're still even in the after effects of that as well, so I'm just happy to be here. I did speak a couple years back. I remember seeing some familiar faces here. And so I just want to kind of touch base and I really want to be here for you guys and answer questions that you guys might have. But I'd like to start off with just introducing myself. Once again, my name is Quentin Brunzold. I am the fire chief for the city of Marshall. Been in that position for just over 4 years now, going on 5 years in May, this upcoming May. Really made a lot of different changes. We have a very young department, which is very exciting and kind of a little bit scary at the same time. But the beautiful part about it is we can really train them the way we want them and need them to be. And the fire service evolves so rapidly that being able to do that, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Not saying that they're not able to be trained, of course they are, but it's just harder, obviously, to get to that. But if we can get new people in that they're easily moldable because they don't know what they don't know, right? So if we train them that way, it kind of works out better. So really working towards that, which is good. We've retired like 18 to 20 people just in the last 4 or 5 years. So we've really had a big turnover. And that wasn't based on anything except for just longevity. We've had a lot of people with 25, 30, 20 years of service that really got to their point in their careers where they can do that. So we have a pension program that after 20 years of service, you can retire and you get your full pension system. So after 20 years, we do have a lot of people that once they hit that mark, they do retire, and we do have some people that do retire a little bit longer. Ray Henriksen, most of you know that name, retired here just this last March after 35 years of service. I'm only 40, so he got on when I was 5. So that was an interesting dynamic, essentially, and we definitely miss him around because he's been around my entire career, obviously, but I'm sure he's enjoying. He just grew a beard, and so he looks a little bit different now. It's a white beard. So but there's that. But anyway, so we have a little bit of that. But we've rehired a bunch of new people ever since then. Usually about 4 or 5 a year. We're actually really at a point now, which is exciting, that we'll hold one last hiring round here this upcoming spring, probably April, May-ish is when we'll do that, and it'll probably be the last time we have to do that for a while, which would be nice. We have 46 individuals right now. Our max strength is about 45. So we're about 1 over strength right now, which is a really good situation to be in. But we're anticipating about 3 to 4 retirements here this year. 2 of our guys will hit 20 years right on the nose, and then 2 will have about 31, 32 years, somewhere in there. So really different in how that works. And I'm just happy for all those individuals. They've really hit a milestone. It's a lot of work to be on the fire department. A lot of additional training, a lot of different things. We do meet typically once a week, so every Tuesday we meet between 6 and 7 p.m., and we usually work until sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night. Usually you might see us out. We are comprised of, we have our hierarchy. It's a paramilitary organization, which means it very similarly resembles the military in how their command structure works. We have a fire chief, we have a deputy chief. His name is Jake Olson. He was just promoted to that position here recently in the last few months. 2 assistant chiefs, one's Tim Anderson, the other's Andrew DeSare. Tim Anderson is our operations chief, so he kind of handles everything to do with anything to do with fighting fires. So anything with the trucks, personnel, equipment, things like that. If there's something wrong, he fixes it, or he finds somebody to get it done. Andrew DeSare, both these individuals were just recently promoted to these positions. Andrew is our training chief, so he handles basically getting all the training scheduled and actually does some of the teaching himself. for that. So do a lot of certifications and things like that. So he's certified to that level where he comes in and does a lot of instructing, which is really exciting and good for our department too. And then we have 5 captains and 5 lieutenants. So the captains and lieutenants really do all the work. They actually oversee all the company operations. So we have 5 truck companies. So 5 captains, 5 lieutenants, 5 truck companies. And all of our staff is divided amongst all those truck companies. So we have a city engine, which is the trucks that you guys see a lot whenever we get called on a run. City engines are 2 of them. We have I think I'm trying to remember the dates of these, but one's I believe at 2012 and the other one's at 2009, I think, truck. I can't remember exactly, but you see them all the time here in the city. They're running around every time we get a run. That's one company. The other's the aerial company. That's the ladder truck. You guys see that relatively out quite often. We have a rural company, so that handles all the calls outside of the city. We have an engine on that, so we technically have 3 engines as part of our department. And then there's a rural tanker. It holds 3,500 gallons of water that we haul a lot of water to, obviously. We have big fires, like, for example, the Swenson fire that was just south of town here recently. We had to call in lots of help for that. We hauled about 490,000 gallons to that. So you can quick do the math on a 3,500 gallon truck. Granted, that truck didn't do it. There was 10 other trucks that were making trips, but it was the first time in my career that I've ever had the cement company call and say, we can help haul water if you need us to. I've never had that before. I actually asked around some of my predecessors if they've ever had it. And back in the day, they used to, but it was just being uneducated for me. I didn't know. The one thing I was worried about was pieces of cement ending up in our drop tanks. We suck it into the pump and it runs through. But those trucks are cleaner than our trucks probably are, is what I'm told. They wash them out after every time. There's literally nothing inside it. So that's kind of interesting. I never knew that. So really I'll have to work with that company because it's a good resource to have, and they can really unload it a lot faster than we can. So that's kind of interesting. So that's the 3rd company we have. The 4th company we have is the rescue company. That's comprised of the rescue truck that hauls most commonly known as the Jaws of Life. And we have some other tools that we use for extrication of automobiles and whatever else. And part of that company also has 2 grass rigs we have. You recently probably read in the newspaper that we do have 2 pumps and tanks that we'll be replacing on those grass rigs too, to the tune of about $32,000. For that is about $12,000 to $14,000 a piece for that. Not counting installation, we'll have those replaced here this year, and that'll be part of that truck company. And the final truck company is the chemical assessment team, which is kind of a whole different breed in itself. That's a state response team. That's comprised of firefighters, and we actually have 4 hazardous materials technicians that are trained to what's called NFPA 1072. NFPA 472. They're technician level certified response personnel. So, for example, we actually cover 14 counties here in southwestern Minnesota, anywhere from Big Stone, South Dakota, or right there, Big Stone County, all the way down to Hills, over to Jackson County, and then up to Redwood, kind of follow the Minnesota River, and that's kind of our area that we cover. And the only way that that's deployed, there's two ways. We can do in-jurisdiction calls, which means if the city of Marshall or the Marshall Fire Department calls for the chemical assessment team, because they're part of our department, we can call them anytime we need to. And there's been two responses here this year that they've been called out on, fairly minor calls, but they've been called on them. And then the only other way that they're able to go out is if the state duty officer deploys them. And so the state duty officer is just a phone number that every fire department in the state has, or any emergency response team, fire, police, EMS, they can call this number, request additional resources, and the chemical assessment team can be that. And a lot of people have a misconception of the chemical assessment team. They believe that they come out and actually fix the problem. They don't fix the problem. The only thing they come to do is really evaluate the situation for the incident commander. So the fire chief or the chief on scene is actually needing more information. We don't know what we have, what the hazards are, how far I have to evacuate, what's the plume from, if it's a gas or whatever, how far do I have to evacuate? That's what the chemical assessment team really comes and does. And somebody a member of the team here about 5-8 years ago put it into perspective for me. They're really the Google of chemicals for us, which is good. So if we do have something we don't really know what we have or how to fix it, they'll come and actually help us with that, which is really good. There's a ton of extra training that they're always doing for that, and they do a really great job. It's something that we took on about a year and a half ago. It used to be a standalone department within the city, and it's no longer. We've actually incorporated that within our fire department. It made sense for staffing purposes. Financially, it made sense, and it just didn't. We needed to staff it better, and so that's how this kind of worked out. So we took 6 firefighters that we currently had, or 6 or 7, and got them trained to that level. It took about a year, just over a year, to get them trained to that capacity, and they're constantly always working to get additional certifications and trainings. They're running up to Camp Ripley. They had just finished what's called JERTC. It's a Joint Emergency Response Training Center up at Camp Ripley, which is really nice. They actually have rail cars at a real railroad there. Rail cars are tipped over. They have a semi-truck that's tipped over. They can actually do some really good, nearly live training that you can't get anywhere else right here in our state, which is good. Because before, if they were going to get some of that, they'd have to actually go to what's called CERTC, same type of acronyms, but that's out in Pueblo, Colorado. So it takes a little, and luckily there's lots of grants. We've actually had 2 or 3 of our individuals have actually gone out to some additional training out there. And there's a little bit of red tape with that, but most of the time it's free from federal grants that are out there for us. So transportation and lodging and food and everything's covered under that grant. Typically, the only thing we have to cover here is the taxpayers, is the payroll, which is relatively inexpensive when you think about the type of knowledge that they're coming back with, which is really good. So they do a lot of extra training for that. There's other conferences that they attend. They travel all over the country, Baltimore, things like that, for different trainings. They come right out of our fire station for that additional training, which is good. We do have another emergency response team that maybe you've read about here recently. We started a technical rescue team, it's called. And you might have seen some things if you follow us on Facebook or anything like that, but we actually have, for an easy way to describe it, it's a rope rescue team. So we actually train at the Merit Center on a once-a-month basis. Every second Tuesday of the month, they train out there, and they deploy their ropes, they inspect them, they put on their gear, and they rappel off the side of the buildings, or they do what's called a pick-off, where if somebody, for example, was hanging by a rope and they just couldn't get up or down any longer because they were stuck, we can go down and we pick them off. Essentially, we can connect right to their existing harness, lift them up, support the load onto our rope, and we can actually get them down to the ground that way. There's a few other things that they've trained on, and there's just always different additional training that has to be done for that. So once a month they train. They tie knots. There's about 14 different knots that they've got to know how to do. And then really kind of inspecting all the equipment, make sure it's good to go and ready to go is really important for them. They actually keep a couple sets of rope that's never had a load on it on purpose, just for deploying in case of a real emergency, but then they have ropes that they use for training all the time that gets dirty and things like that. Like I said, we inspect all that equipment and log it. And if you happen to get to our open house here, we'll actually have that trailer open so you can kind of see all the additional gear and things like that really you guys funded. It was most of it came from private donations. When we do our annual mailer, we actually pulled a lot of that money together to purchase that equipment to train or to equip that team for doing that. So it's really awesome for that. So if you do get by here on Thursday is our open house. This is Fire Prevention Week. If you get by Thursday, just swing by and you'll see the trailer kind of sitting up front there, and there'll be somebody there to answer any questions, and you can say that you heard me talking about it here at the Senior Center, and I'll make sure the guys know that for sure. Because otherwise they might look at you a little crazy. But we train on a once-a-month basis. We do about 160 to 180 runs a year. We do have a few times where we have what's called chief's pages. We have 4 chiefs, 4 captains, and 4 lieutenants that go on call on a once-a-week basis. I'm actually on call right now, so if my pager goes off, I have to leave. But once a week we take, or once a month, excuse me, for a week we take call, and so we really be careful about going anywhere. We always make sure that there's somebody covering for us. We want to make sure there's always a captain, a chief, and a lieutenant that's always in the city, ready to respond anytime. So we really make sure of that. Sometimes just the chiefs get called to different runs, whether it's a carbon monoxide alarm or something like that that doesn't require the entire department to be deployed at one time. They'll run on their own. That's probably 30 to 40 times a year. So if you add it all together, about 220 runs a year we roughly make. We have a budget that's just shy of 700,000 is what that is, not counting any capital expenses. So it's relatively inexpensive when you think of the big picture to have a fire department of our caliber with the equipment that we do with that type of a budget, which is actually kind of incredible. The rest of it's funded by private donations that we have. You guys have, many, if not most of you, have contributed to our Relief Association for additional equipment purchases and things like that. And capital purchases are budgeted on a year-to-year basis. Nothing is cheap in the fire service, I'll tell you that. We just got, 2 years ago, we just replaced all of our air packs, or our self-contained breathing apparatus, new masks. I think we had 26 back packs and 42 cylinders. You got to have 2 of each. For one pack, it was about $235,000 for that, just to replace that. It's just incredible how much that costs to do that. Here in a couple weeks, you'll probably read about it in the paper where I'll be going forward to the city council to actually replace our ladder truck that we have. It's a 1994. It's a beautiful truck, looks brand new, but starting to get some gremlins in it. Those trucks usually last about 25 years, so we're right at the edge or just past of where it's going to be suitable for us. That's about $1.5 million for that, which is really incredible. When truck was purchased, it was about $650,000 30 years ago, so it's really incredible to see how much that stuff costs to replace. It's just crazy. So a lot of it's just due to regulations, inspecting, things like that have to be followed by different agencies or associations and regulatory things like that. So, yeah. Any questions so far? I've been rambling here for about 20 minutes. Dick?
Maybe I didn't understand it right, but say there's a fire call.
Yeah.
Who decides which truck goes, and is there a group of people that go with that truck, or can anybody that's available go?
Yeah, good question. Just so the people at home, I don't know if you can could you pick that up, Alex, at all? Okay. The question was, how do we know what trucks to take on a run, and are the guys trained only to that specific company? Great question. All of our firefighters are cross-trained on everything. So it's basically the first 6 individuals that show up at the fire station first jump in the first truck. We actually have protocols that we have. It's handwritten protocols that for this type of fire, these trucks go first. For this type of scene, this goes first. And we never have to call back unless it's something special that we see. When the incident commander shows up on scene or the first arriving officer, they might see something that we know we have on a different truck, and so we'll have that truck deploy first. But most of all of our staff know what to grab. Let's use this for an example. There's a house fire at 123 Maple Street. I hope none of you live there. Well, 123 Maple Street has a house fire. We know the city engine's going first, the aerial second, the third, the second city engine's going, and then we'll actually roll the rescue truck. And we roll the rescue truck because that truck, yes, it has the jaws of life and other tools for extrication, but it's also got what's called a cascade system on it. So there's 4 6,000-pound cylinders that hold 6,000 pounds of breathing air on it. It's up in the top of it that we actually can refill cylinders from. We just connect them to it. It goes into a explosion-proof case that we close the lid on, so in case something happens when we're filling it. And we fill all of our cylinders back up. They hold 4,500 PSI, which only lasts about 20 minutes worth of breathing air. So we really train a lot on how to control your breathing, control your heart rate, things like that, which is not easy to do. And so that's why it does take some training. And we've done some things over the past number of years. We've actually played dodgeball, wearing all of our gear, and just so you can get your heart rate up and still try to control your breathing to make that last as long as you can. The last thing we want to have happen is to have somebody take off their mask in an IDLH atmosphere, immediate danger to life and health. That's what IDLH stands for. And then we have to go and find that person. Likely it'd be a recovery and not a rescue anymore if they're in that atmosphere and they remove their mask. So we have to train on that a lot. Like I said, Dick, everybody's cross-trained, so first 6 individuals jump in, but there's sometimes we'll have a lot of new people. You heard me talk about that already, where they're not super comfortable. Let's say like the aerial. That's a little bit of a challenge in itself to deploy that. Take some experienced people. We train on it regularly in order to make sure everybody knows what they're doing. But sometimes they might actually go to the 3rd truck and wait until more experienced people to show up. There's only 4 people that can ride in that truck right now because it's all the seats we have. The new truck, if that does pass, will have 6 individuals for that. But the setup time will be incredibly faster because of the new, just difference in technology. Now everything's manual. We hold a lot of things. We have to watch gauges, check levels, things like that. Where on the new truck, it's like push a button and it just does it for you. So I can think you can set the whole truck up in like 32 seconds with 1 person now. On the new truck, now it takes all 4 individuals to pull all the stuff off, get it set, ready to go. So it's just a lot of manual stuff, but it works really well. And it's a beautiful truck. You guys see it all the time around town, and you'll see it here. If you come to the fire station on Wednesday, you get a good look at it. So did I answer your question, Dick?
Thank you.
What's the reach of your aerial truck?
It's 100 feet, which you have to kind of do a little geometry at the same time. It's 100 foot straight up. Obviously, if you nose into something, I don't know if you remember about 20 years ago, there was an individual that passed away falling off the water tower about 20 years ago, 18 years ago. And there was actually somebody still hanging off of there. And that was a bad run no matter what, or that entire day. We had another bad call right prior to that. But we actually brought, and you probably worked at the street shop when this happened still, but we nosed straight into the water tower, raised the aerial up all the way, but here's the truck, here's the aerial. There's quite an angle here. We don't have 100 feet, and that guy was like 100 feet almost exactly. So they extended all the way out as far as they could to get to it, and they were about 6 feet shy of trying to get him. And he kind of shimmied out of his harness and landed in the basket, which made the whole basket and truck start to sway this way. So it was kind of a scary situation, but we saved him essentially. So in my eyes, that paid for that truck like that, right there. I mean, when you can save 1 life like that, it was well worth that. And it's had a number of other different things, but that's one in my career that really stands out to me. I'd only been on the fire department for like a year or maybe 2 at the time when that happened. So yeah, 100 feet. Some are 107 now, but and the new aerial will have it would be a 100-foot platform. There's 2 different types of aerial units. One has a platform on the front, just like ours, a big basket 1 or 2 individuals can stand in. The other will have just what's called a monitor. It'll be just a nozzle on the end of a ladder. So imagine the top rung of your ladder. That's what some look like. Ours will have a platform or a working area so we can do things out of it. And we have special fall protection and self-retracting lifelines that we can connect to ourselves to protect us in case something happens. We do work outside of it, so we're still connected to the aerial, so if the roof does cave in, we can get caught by that. And so we've added those things in the past. So
I know that you do more than just fires. You have a lot of accidents and stuff you go to, and I know it has to be pretty traumatic and some of the things that you see and do. So do you have some type of debriefing that you do when they come back to the fire hall to help them?
Yeah, the question was if we do have some type of debriefing or things like that, if we have a bad call or whatever. Yeah, there's actually a way we can get resources from outside, especially outside the city. And there's lots of CIST teams, so Critical Incident Stress Debriefing teams is what that stands for, that can come in if requested. We have called them a couple times in my career that we've had them come around, and a lot of it, like Kathy said, we see a lot of stuff that most people you don't want to see and you shouldn't have to see, but somebody has to come and try to help out as best we can. And when I was a young firefighter, I had a hard time with that. I still remember a couple of the very first fatalities that I had been to in my career. I still remember them. Sometimes I still see them when I drive by the area where it was at. And so we have called in some things like that. It's been a few years. We haven't had, thank goodness, we haven't had anything incredibly bad. There have been some bad runs, but nothing that really affects a lot of people in a different way like that. And the fire service has really changed a lot, even in the last 10 years, where back when I first got on, for the most part, it was manly to just hold it all in. You don't talk about that, which is not a good thing to do mentally and physically for your body. And unfortunately, there's a lot of suicide in the fire service because people can't handle that on their own. They have to be able to talk about it. So with employee assistance programs and things like that the city offers, we have lots of resources out there, and we talk about it quite often where we'll say, just come and there's a lot of us that have been around a long time. You can talk to all of us. You know, my door's always open. Everybody's got my cell phone number, and the same for all of our other chiefs as well. You know, and other officers. We got a lot of senior people that have been around a long time that, you know, hopefully can act in that capacity. And if anybody ever comes and needs some help, I have no problems trying to find as much help as I can for them, because that's the last thing that I would want to have happen is something happen because somebody couldn't take the emotional stress that it really kind of builds on. And that's why, you know, 20 years sometimes in this business is really okay. And it's a lot of time away from family. It's a lot of time, a lot of things you don't really want to be a part of or see in your careers and lives, and shouldn't have to. And it's a lot of stress at really, you know, any given time. You know, let's think 2 o'clock in the morning, that pager goes off and you jump out of bed. I still jump out of bed. Mostly because it's laying on my nightstand and it vibrates so violently that it scares the crap out of me. It wakes me up, but I have slept through them before. But so we have that. But just, 20 years sometimes can be enough for some people. So
Very similar to PTSD.
it's exactly what it is. So it's a very high probability of receiving that, and it's just like occupational cancer as well. I don't remember the statistic. We post it every year around the Relay for Life, but it's like firefighters have a triple the amount of risk of receiving occupational cancer just due to the things that are on fire around them, breathing. Everything's full of foam, and we call it frozen gasoline. That, you know, I mean, just look at our chairs and the things that we're sitting on, all this stuff on the wall. I mean, that stuff catches fire and it creates these toxic chemicals that, unfortunately, we try to prevent breathing in, but sometimes it's not possible. We have better tools now than we did 20 years ago. We actually have 4 gas monitors that tell the carbon monoxide level in the air and other chemicals that we're trying to sniff for. And if it's not safe that way, we're in with full breathing apparatus, no matter if the fire's out or not. It's just the off-gassing really kind of still creates a effect. And the older I get, the harder it is. And sometimes I'll leave a call, even just the runs we had yesterday, and you just have a headache from even breathing in cornstalk fire. I mean, that's not that big a deal, but it displaces the oxygen and all that stuff you need in order to live a good life. And sometimes if you have a shortfall of that oxygen level in your blood, it just kind of makes you a little bit off. So we try to prevent that as much as we can.
Where do you go to get a fire extinguisher checked out?
Great question. Where do you go to get a fire extinguisher checked out? Every time I talk to I have a fellow that I call all the time for ours. He always asks me a few questions. Number one, does it have a metal handle? If it has a metal handle, they likely can check it and refill it for us. I'd like to work with him. Right now he does it once a year. He'll do any daycare in the city has to have a fire extinguisher as part of their daycare license. And so instead of him going to all these individual daycares, for example, he'll come to the fire station and have them all come to him in one shot, and then he inspects them, refills them if needed. But what happens is on fire extinguishers, they actually need to be hydro tested, and I can't remember if it's 10 or 15 years. And it's actually really expensive process in order to do that. So most of the time what happens is they go right in the garbage. They get recycled. So it's cheaper sometimes to buy a new one than it is to have one refilled. So that's a good question. So if you do have something, let me know. Just send me an email. My email address is on the City of Marshall website. Hey, I got this extinguisher. What should I do with it? And we might be able to get it down there and get it checked out. I had about 6 of them here last week that he came and checked. They were all up to date, and he just recycled them all. And then you just tell the homeowner it's likely cheaper to buy a new one. Actually, let's go.
Okay, the size of a detector, I've been told that the one that we have is smaller, but that we should actually have a larger one.
Yeah, you're talking extinguisher? Size of them? Yeah, so a lot of times residential homeowners will have these very small ones that's kind of mostly filled with it's like a liquid agent. and likely the brand, if it's like First Alert or something like that. Those are okay for really small fires, but a fire nowadays doubles in size every 3 minutes. So if we can have a ABC extinguisher that are about, it's a 10 pounder, they go by pounds. 10-pound extinguishers would be perfect for home use. And if it's something that actually has, if it's ABC, it'll be perfect. It makes a mess, but as long as you can clean it up if you did have a fire in your house. But a lot of times, it's a good question to bring up. A lot of times we can put the fire out without even needing a fire extinguisher. For example, if we have a grease fire or something on top of our stove, anybody know how to put that out? A lid, exactly. So just having the lid right there, not leaving it in the cupboard when you're cooking hamburger or whatever. And you have to be careful when you put it on. You have to hold it at kind of an angle, and you kind of go over top of it to get it to put out. But that's one way to put out. What's the other way? Anybody know? Not flour. Baking soda. Baking soda. Flour is flammable, extremely flammable, along with water. Water mixed with grease will create the gigantic fireball that likely will create way more damage than it needs to. There's actually things out there that I think it's called Fire Stop. I'm trying to remember it. I actually have a couple at the fire station. It looks like a fuel chafer, you know, those when you go to like an event and the food's all set out and they got those fuel chafer things. It looks just like that, except there's a magnet on top where the flame would normally come out. And it actually hangs inside your range, where if fire does happen to hit it, it just poof. It blows down a little tiny bit of chemical or ABC extinguisher stuff and puts out the fire like that. It actually works pretty well. You have one hanging, you don't even see them if they're there. They hang right inside your range. A lot of times everybody has microwaves there now, and so don't have a lot of room, but that is an option. If you're interested in learning more about that, send me an email or give me a call. I can tell you exactly where to go. They're not cheap. They're about $75 for 2 of them, but in the end of the day, it's cheap. It's the cheapest way to go. It's going to be way cheaper than having a fire in your house. So that's a good question.
And where do you buy them?
Well, that was on Amazon, but Brad Gerhop would likely.
Or the extinguisher too?
Well, you can get those mostly at any hardware store, Runnings or whatever. We'll have a lot of those. Menards, yep. 10-pound extinguisher is about perfect. I think they have between 5 and 10 pound. Most everything you can get, just don't get the real small ones that are no bigger than like a hairspray can. Those are too small in my opinion, but just the next size bigger is about perfect for a residential homeowner. I'm sorry, was there another one over here?
Yeah, I bought a new fire extinguisher a while back. What do I do with the old one? Do I have to discharge it, or?
Is it still under pressure?
Yes, it's got a plastic handle.
Okay. A lot of times I can take that off your hands if you just want to set it behind the fire station. We'll use it for training purposes. Sometimes we have, it likely will still work, but it's just the risk that you run that it might be under pressure, but the stuff inside might be packed together and not come out very easily. So if you want to donate that to the fire department, we'll take that off your hands, and we take the risk during trainings that that if it works, we take that risk essentially. But hopefully we have about 10 more behind it that we can use. We use it for training, and then we use it for, like when the demolition derby's in town for the fair, we actually use it for those little car fires out there. So if you want to, that's one option. Otherwise, you can use it for your own training. If you want to, don't start anything on fire, but if you want to, it's not bad for the environment or anything. You can utilize it outside and use it for training for your own family or whatever, just so get that feel of how to do it. Anybody know what the acronym that's used for how to deploy a fire extinguisher? Anybody remember that?
Yes.
And what does the P stand for? Pull. How about the A?
Aim.
Aim. First S?
Fire at
Sweep.
the base of the fire.
Close. Squeeze first and then sweep. So acronym to easy remember to deploy a fire extinguisher is PASS. P-A-S-S. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep the base of the fire. That's exactly right. I'm very impressed that you remember that, Doreen.
City employee.
There you go. OSHA safety training. Yeah, OSHA safety training.
They say you're supposed to take your fire extinguisher once a month, turn it upside down, and
Tap on it.
Tap on it.
Yeah, I don't know how necessary that is anymore, but we do it when we check our fire extinguishers on our truck. I think they'll still go, but I think that's kind of an old thing, that just how you were trained back in the day. But we do the same thing. We just take a little hammer and just tap on it just to get that stuff kind of loosened up in there. You know, if you think about like our trucks, for example, they sit in there and they just bounce and just packs in there. So yeah, we do it on a once a month basis. We have a little bit bigger ones, 20 pounders that we do, and we do tap on the bottom. So you won't hurt anything if you do that. Just don't hit them real hard, but you should be okay.
They say to use a rubber mallet?
Yeah, I would use a rubber mallet just so it doesn't hurt or dent the container that it's in. Yeah, good question. Any other?
How expensive are those fire extinguishers, like a 10-pounder?
You're likely going to spend 30 to 40 bucks probably on one, but if you need it, it's well worth it. Yeah, they have more expensive ones too. Don't get suckered into some of those you see on the TV and whatever. That's this magic potion that'll put your fires out and whatever. Some of those are upwards of $600 for a fire extinguisher, and it doesn't look any different than hardly the ones you have in your house. But there's some out there that claim to be the magic answer, but if it was that great, everybody would have one. Dick?
You said you were probably gonna be hiring another, fireman.
Are you looking to apply?
No. I never had to. But, is there a pool of people that are looking, to become a firefighter?
Yeah, good question. Is there a pool of people? Back when I got on, you had to almost know somebody 20 years ago. If you didn't know anybody, there was no chance. Way back in the day, it was a totally different ran organization. It can't be that way, obviously, anymore. But if you didn't know anybody or somebody didn't like something about you, you got blackballed. Anybody remember what that is? And so that happened quite a bit. And I heard a story about a fellow that everybody really liked, but he had long hair at the time. And so he just didn't understand why they didn't let him on the fire. This is 30, 40 years ago, whatever. They didn't understand. And so he was talking to a wife of the chief at the time, or whatever the story fully goes, and asked about that. And well, she caught wind from her husband of what the story was. And she said, hey, cut your hair and then try next time. So he cut his hair, tried next time. No blackball, he's on the fire department. So it's no longer that way, obviously, but we don't have a pool. We've tried a few different things in the past. We've actually done where we left the application period open the whole time for an entire year. We ran into issues where people would become upset. We'd actually warn them, say, hey, we're not actually hiring, but we appreciate you sending your, Doreen, you remember this. We appreciate you sending your application, but our period isn't opening until June or July or whenever we were having it. People would apply in August or September and kind of get offended because we never called them when they applied. After we did warn them that, hey, our period doesn't open until this time, but we appreciate you applying. And so we did have some kind of hurt feelings and people that were kind of upset with us. So we actually went back to the old model where we just opened the period for, like 3 weeks or something where anybody can apply. And we spend quite a bit of money on some marketing materials and radio ads and things like that. And most people are annoyed hearing my voice by the end of that campaign because we really are trying to find people that want to be a part of us. And we have usually between 10 and 12 people that have applied for a period, and sometimes we only need 3 or 4 people. Sometimes we only need 1. Sometimes we need a couple. So it all just depends on what we get for applicants that period. And the process is kind of interesting. So we have a application period, you put it in. We do a written examination. It's 90 questions. Come down to the fire station, get 3 hours to do it in. Unfortunately, there are some people that don't pass that, and there's a reason why we have to do it that way. If you're hired on the fire department, just to get firefighter 1 and 2 certification, it's a 1,450-page book that we're actually want you to understand and know how to implement in a matter of about 4 months. So we really are looking for very intelligent people, not saying that people haven't passed it are not intelligent, don't get me wrong, but we're looking for people that can really comprehend and put this all together in a short period of time so we can put you to work and make fires with and try to get, help the community out is really what we're looking for. Some people have taken the test 2-3 times and then they pass it second, third time. So there's debate on if that's the right way to go. That's our process that we've done and it's worked out well, I think, for us. The second part of that, if you pass the written test, is a physical ability test. We actually put some fire gear on you. We put an SCBA or a self-contained breathing apparatus on you. We take you out to the Merit Center and we kind of set up a bunch of obstacles that are real life feeling type of things. We want to see how your body's going to react, how physically able are you to perform these duties. We do have some people that do not pass that part of it. Either they didn't pass it in satisfactory time or they didn't finish it. That happens. If you do pass it in satisfactory time, then we invite you to the oral interviews. Sit down in a panel of the 4 fire chiefs typically, and we ask 15, 18 different questions, and we monitor or we write down what your answers and evaluate based on that. And if you make it past that, the last part of it is a hazmat physical. We're required by OSHA to test your blood and things, make sure that you're able to wear a self-contained breathing apparatus and that your physical being, you're good to go with the rigors of what it takes to be a firefighter. Pass all that, we'll give you a pager and some turnout gear, we give you a locker, and we start training you here. And usually it's a few months after that. We get you acclimated about and all your questions answered. The first 3-4 months of being on the fire department, you're not really responding to calls. We don't put anybody in situations that they're not trained for. So you have to be Fire 1 and 2 certified essentially to fight a fire in the city of Marshall. We do bring sometimes our newer recruits out to scenes where they do small jobs, like we teach them how to fill the air cylinders, or they may, we might have them run errands for us to go get water for, the setting up a rehab facility, a rehab station for us or whatever. There are different things, and sometimes it's good to have knowledge and experience being on big scenes like that, so you can kind of see how incident command works and how we put all these pieces of the puzzle together in a short period of time. Sometimes it's good for them to see that. So, is there an age limit on that? Good question. When I first got on, you had to be 35 years old or younger. And the reason for that is because you had to be off by 55 back in the day. It is no longer that way. So if you are able to do the job, we cannot discriminate based on age. I've hired a 59-year-old individual here a few years back. He moved away, but he did get on the fire department. He passed all the tests, and we can't discriminate, and we're not going to discriminate based on age. So that's why I said, Dick, if you can do it, we'll have you. We just have to meet the standard is all, and I'm just poking fun, but that's how that works. So it's not that way any longer. So my dad is actually still on the fire department. He's 62, and we have a few others that are just over 60 or just above as well. They can still do the job, but they're at the end of their careers. But we can't discriminate based on age. That's a good question.
Do they every year have to go through a physical again?
They don't. Well, we have a 3-year cycle of training that we do, and every 3 years I have to sign off on their certifications. So we do test on different things, and periodically. It's not really testing, it's just more of did you do this, whatever it is, this training. I've kicked around about doing physical ability testing, but we do not do a physical ability test every year. There are some departments that do, a lot of career departments do, but we do not do that here in the city. A lot of us do it to prove to ourselves that we can still do it. Like when we do new hire testing, like I was just telling you about, we'll have sometimes, not sometimes, every time we have somebody actually run it prior to all of our new people to show that you can do this. And my dad has ran it here just a couple years back. He did it. I did it this last year. I'm only 40, so it's not the same, but it still takes a toll on you for sure.
You ever have women apply?
We have had a few women apply, yes. I actually encourage it. I wish we had more that would apply. It's going to really take a pioneer in the city, and I hope there is somebody that will do that. And
I saw Lynn had a couple women.
Yep, there are a few departments around this part of the state, and especially the county, that do have some female firefighters. I want some. I think that we're missing half the demographics in the city, that we don't have any right now. And I believe in my career there's only been 3 or 4 that have applied, and some didn't make it through the testing. And I believe there was one that made it through the testing, but something happened and I'm not exactly sure. She didn't make it all the way through her probationary period or something. I'm not sure what happened there. But there are none right now, but I'm waiting for the day that, because it'll be big news in the city that the city finally has a female firefighter, and some of those women are pretty bad women that make some of the guys look
silly.
yeah, exactly. And there's some girls out there that are hardcore that I hope we can tap into someday. That's a good question.
And we only have to watch Chicago Fire to see that.
That's right. Chicago Fire is our nemesis because none of that stuff is true. I remember watching an episode one time where the end of the aerial like broke off and he's hanging there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. This is very not realistic, but hey, it makes good TV. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you had a nice section in the paper, with the Fire Prevention Week.
Yeah, thank you.
It was kind of tailored to youth,
Yep.
and that. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, thank you. We actually have a committee that puts a lot of this together, and this is our week to shine. As you know, last night we kept a lot of you out of bed, likely for a few hours, and we actually do that strategic. We do it on purpose because, even going back to when I was a kid, I remember the fire trucks going by, and you have to make sure that the kids are really driving this thing with their parents. Hey, we have to practice our exit drills. My 5-year-old daughter's in preschool is telling me what the theme to Fire Prevention Week is this year, and I'm like, how do you even know that? So it's really important. That's why we kind of market it towards the kids because they're really helping to push the parents on being just to practice that type of stuff. And it's exciting for the kids to see the fire trucks coming around, and so we've changed a few things here in the last 5 years and how we market it. Really by using social media a tremendous amount. It's the best part, it's free. It doesn't cost a thing to do it. We have a couple people that are administrators on it, and they post all the content and things like that. And we really want to help educate the public. That's what most of our job is. It's not just putting fires out and responding to people's worst day. That's a big part of it, but a lot of it is fire education. That's why I'm here. I'm helping to educate on different things. Answer questions. Sometimes it's things that you just never think about, and why would you sometimes, right? So that's what we're kind of here for, so we appreciate that. The committee works hard. We have 2 individuals that, one is definitely, he takes the entire week off, Fire Prevention Week, and all he does is daycares and preschool visits this whole week for the most part. We have all the kindergartners come the Friday prior to Fire Prevention Week, so they were just there on Friday. They come, I don't know if you follow our Facebook page, but we had pictures of all the kids walking around the trucks and doing stop, drop, and roll and that whole thing. And a lot of times it's the same group of our staff that does that year after year, and they just love doing that. And I'm grateful for that because that continuity of having them do it year over year is really a good thing. So they do that, and then we give the guys a Tuesday off from training here. This month we'll actually have our special response teams will still train, but the rest of our department will be off. And then Thursday is our open house, but we also do 3rd grade visits. We'll take the smoke trailer to all the 3rd graders, and we go to their classroom and talk to them a little bit, and then we have them come out to the trailer, and we fill it with smoke, and we have them exit out the back of that. We do a little teaching in it, so it's a better controlled environment to have them in that safe smoke than it is the bad stuff. So they put a lot of work into this, and yeah, so thank you for the compliments. Very nice.
How far of a radius do you cover?
Yeah, good question. How big is our protection area? We obviously cover every square mile of the city of Marshall, but we also cover a large area outside of the city as well. We did lose a little bit of ground. Some of it's very political about costs and things like that. Up until this year, I believe we're about 140 square miles we cover. We cover, if you go County Road 6 to the east of here towards Milroy, we cover everything except 1 mile to the Redwood County border, basically to the east of here. To the north, we cover all the way up to County Road 24, which is just north of Green Valley, and 24 cuts across and comes down, and County Road 8 cuts through Green Valley. That's where our territory goes to, and then down to the south, we actually, to the west of town, we go 5 miles to the west on Highway 19, And we do 1 mile north and 1 mile south of the highway. Otherwise, Lynn takes over or Ghent takes over on the north side of that. South is kind of weird. It goes into a V shape because you got cities that are covering other areas, but down to, I believe it's County Road 2 that goes to Amoret. I believe that's what it is. We go all the way to there, and then Tracy and Garvin pick up from there. So it's a relatively large area that we do have.
About 40 years ago, we had a combine fire and a field fire.
Yep.
And we are in County 2, and our land is to the south of County 2, but to the north is the house I ran to.
Right.
I called the Marshall Fire Department, and she said, you have to call Tracy. And
Right.
I'm not calling Tracy. I'm on a Marshall line, and
Right.
I'm right there.
Right.
Well, Marshall came out, and Tracy came, I guess, eventually, but anyway, I was just kind of, because I was so, and she said, I can't, I said, well, I just ran.
Right,
Up
right.
the hill and across the ditch and into the neighbor's house. I
Sure.
didn't even know the neighbors. I just moved in. I just opened the door and hollered fire, and of course then her and him came to help us. But,
Sure.
I could hardly talk to her, you know.
Yeah.
But I said, I don't care. I'm right across the road.
Yeah, sometimes the line, I mean, we go by addresses, and it depends on what side of the street you are, and sometimes on who's going to come. And yeah, sometimes the one area, municipality might be closer than the other, but the other has the contract based on costs and a lot of
But
things.
Marshall arrived, and
Right,
Tracy
good.
came after, so
Yep.
I didn't care. I just went with the neighbor, and we went across, and we did what we could to get
Sure.
out, what we could get out.
It brings up a really good point too. We actually have a mutual aid agreement with about 140 other fire departments across the state. It's called the West Central and Southwest Mutual Aid Association Agreement. So basically from that same 14 county area, which is actually just a little bit bigger, we actually have a mutual aid agreement with every fire department in that response area. So we can call anybody and they'll come for anything. And then really what it lays down is a cost. There's a cost to everything. So what that agreement says in the long and the short of it, if they're on scene for 5 hours or less, it's free. They come for 5 hours or less, it costs nothing to the homeowner or to the municipality requesting. But if they're there for 5 hours and 1 minute, they can bill back every hour per apparatus, per person, all the way back to hour 1. Which can get very, very expensive.
Well, we never got a bill from either department.
Right.
And I'm assuming Marshall called Tracy, because I did not
Could be.
stick around to find out.
Yeah. We call mutual aid. The 2 runs we had yesterday, we had mutual aid at both of them. As you know, we have 2 grass rigs. We need 5 or 6 essentially to cover what we need. And that's why we have mutual aid, because it's not cost effective to have all this equipment sitting around to use once or twice a year. So we have people that we call on that capacity. Unfortunately, I wish I could say that it was free for calling the fire department. It's not free. A lot of people don't know that. If you have a fire in the city of Marshall, it's a $750 bill. Typically, your insurance will cover up to $500 of that, $250 out of pocket. And then if it's outside in the county, it's a $1,000 charge is what that is, if it's 5 hours or less. If it's more than 5 hours, then we bill back, just like that mutual aid agreement says. And some can get very, very expensive. I've seen to the tunes of $20,000 to $25,000 before. So, but that's a very large structure, obviously, grain elevators, things like that are multi-day responses that take a long, long time and a lot of resources.
40 years ago, things were different.
They were a lot different, a lot different. A lot of people have this comment. They say, well, but I pay taxes. Yes, everybody pays taxes, and what our taxes actually pay for is fire protection. And that's the day-to-day things, okay? So training firefighters. To train one firefighter is $1,370 just for that 4-month class that they take, not counting the equipment that they put on. We've put $3,000 worth of equipment on them, from helmet to Nomex hood to boots to gloves. Just one pair of gloves is $300. It's just crazy how much all this stuff costs. Boots, $300. It puts fire hose on fire trucks and fire trucks in the fire station. That's what all of our taxes pay for. And then the rest of it is really a user fee. Unfortunately, that's kind of how it works. It helps offset the levy. It keeps taxes as low as possible. And typically, municipalities are not subsidizing insurance companies when you already have that coverage, and that's really what it is. Unfortunately, there is a business to public safety, and that's kind of how it comes to life sometimes. It's not popular to talk about, but it's good to get it out there so people understand.
That was my question about the cost.
Costs, yeah.
I guess I didn't even think about that.
Most of it, I'll say a majority of our costs, or our calls are nothing. We don't charge anything. It's really if there was a fire in your house or garage or something, and kind of evaluate it. If we stretched a line and sprayed a lot of water or sprayed some water, you'll likely will have an insurance claim, which then we'll send a bill for. If it's something to come and look at your smoke alarm or something, we don't send bills for that. I encourage you to call us when you have something like that. We'll come and take a look at it. Which is I'm going to put a shameless plug in for your smoke alarms. It's 10 years on your smoke alarms if you have them. Pull them off the wall. There is a date code on the back that'll tell you the born on date. If it's older than 10 years, replace them. And I've ran into that in my own house where I was testing my alarms one year, and they were 11 years old, and you couldn't hear. Pushed the button and you couldn't hear it. Nothing happened. So that goes to show that the sensors or things go bad in it. You may have to hire an electrician to come put those in, especially if you have them hardwired in. Hardwired is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it alerts you if there's a fire in the basement. All the alarms in the whole house will go off. It's a bad thing because it reminds you it doesn't remind you that you have to check your batteries in it. The backup, that battery is only for backup. So change that every time we set our clocks back or ahead. That's a good reminder for that, and go from there. Carbon monoxide alarms are only 5 years, between 5 and 7. So they're a little bit even less than that. So if you do have the same thing. Summer combo alarms, that is still up to the 10. Technology is getting better, which is good, but we run into those every now and again. We get a lot of runs to people that they're just not familiar with the sounds that a fire alarm makes, and so the alarm's going off in their apartment for the last half an hour. They can't get it figured out. We show up, it's just a low battery alarm. So we have quite a bit of that happens, a few runs a year that we replace the battery in. We carry 9-volt batteries in our truck just for that exact purpose, and hopefully make that person's day so they can go to sleep at least. And it always happens at 2 o'clock in the morning. Any other questions here? We're right up against the clock, but I'm not in a hurry if you're not.
I put mine in the freezer because I couldn't shut
Yeah.
one 10-year ones off, and it was only 2 years old.
We-
And it wouldn't go off at night, and I just put it in my freezer.
Sure.
And it still
We-
didn't buzz. The next day, I wrapped it in a blanket and took it to Menards. I said, do something.
Yeah. We had a run here, this was only about 6 months ago, and it was a large, a bunch of conglomeration of apartment complexes over on Pearl Avenue. And a neighbor had called and said, there's a fire alarm going off over there in that big patch of apartments, but we have no idea where. So we responded over there. We had every fire truck in the station that was over there. We were trying to figure out what the problem was. And the sound was coming from outside, but we couldn't tell where. And so we were walking around, and then all of a sudden we'd hear this thing beep at us, and so then we would kind of start walking in that direction. Well, we never did find it, except we sounded like it was coming from the dumpster, like somebody's was going off, so they threw it out. Well, they didn't throw it out. We would put, I stuck my head inside the dumpster. The sound wasn't there like it was on the outside. Well, here to come to find out, the stupid alarm was underneath the dumpster. And so we couldn't, it was just deflecting the sound in a weird way that reminded me of that, where somebody just got sick of the beeping, didn't know how to fix it, so they threw it outside. There you go. Any other questions here?
Do you still use the water truck from wastewater for additional water?
Every once in a while. It's been a long time since we have, but they do have that. The hard part for us is getting a hold of somebody that'll operate it for us. We don't have keys to get out there, but they have that one. Sometimes it's the last thing I'm thinking about is that extra truck where I just send a page out to other departments, and sometimes they have 2 trucks that they can bring, and really getting water there is the easy part. Getting water off fast is the hard part, and I'm grateful for every bit of resources we've had. We've had lots of farmers that have spray trucks or whatever, for example, and their trucks have these large tanks in it, but the outlet's only a 2-inch hose. Where on our trucks, to get the water out, it's a 10 by 10 gate valve that we just throw the lever and the water all comes in 20 seconds, we can dump 3,500 gallons, where that takes sometimes 10 or 15 minutes. And so we have to really evaluate when we're pulling in 1,250 gallons a minute, but he's only pushing out 250 gallons a minute, we have to really evaluate what's speed for us, you know what I mean?
Depends on the scenario.
Correct. Everything's different. You're right. But we have used it in the past. We use it a lot of times when the tree dump is here. We'll actually haul. Yep.
They do have an on-call person at wastewater all the time.
I should actually probably just get that phone number and then I'll call that person.
Yeah, call out the wastewater, they'll
Right.
give it to you.
Yeah.
It's a cell phone number.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. Any other questions? Well, folks, I do appreciate it. Once again, it's Fire Prevention Week, so if you do have any questions about anything, feel free to call us or email me or whatever. All of our contact information is right on the City of Marshall website. Dick?
I was just gonna say, before you quit, I hope you pass it on and thank everybody.
Yeah, we will do that.
Work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our honor to be able to serve the City of Marshall and all the community and all the citizens of the city. We really take pride in what we do. You can see that by just upkeep of the building, upkeep of the equipment, how we train monthly, and it's really a culture that's taken 120 years to develop to be where it's at. It's just different than any other department in the area, I believe, that we just really hold ourselves to a high standard, and we do that proudly because we know it's important. We want to look like Chicago Fire when you call us. And this isn't all of our full-time jobs. I'm an equipment finance guy, and we have people that are bankers. We've got, you name it, we have somebody that does it. And we get called on everybody's worst day. Unfortunately, it takes time for that to happen. And we drop everything we have if we're able to, if we're not in the middle of a meeting or something other that, whatever, and try to make it as fast as we can. There are some times where people are very excited when what took so long? Well, I'll tell you, we come as fast as we can, but let's do the math really fast. We catch a page, you call 911, it takes them a minute or two to figure out who they're gonna get coming to you. They have to page for us, we have to leave our job, get in our trucks. I go directly to the scene along with a few other of our fire officers, but then the rest of them have to drive from wherever they're at. If it's a senior center, Menards, Runnings, wherever, they go to the fire station then, so there's a 3 or 4 minute drive there, typically. Jump on the apparatus, get their clothes on, there's a minute, jump in the apparatus, then drive to the scene. It could be, response times could be over 10 minutes, which sounds like a really long period of time, but for us, it's really short. Because we're not waiting for a fire to come in. We always are, that's how we carry these pagers, but everything takes time. But for the person requesting, it's light years it takes for us to show up, and we get that. So sometimes we have to calm people down and tell them that, hey, we're trying our best, but we're just not set up on a full staffing model, and we just can't afford it. We need millions of levy dollars for that. We just don't have that. Or the need. We only have 200 runs a year. That's, if you do the math, it's like 7.75 runs a day. That's not worth having a full-time fire department, in my opinion, or even having a duty crew with 3 or 4 people that are full-time.
Are there people that stay at the fire station?
No. So it was back in the day when Chief Ed Shealy had the building built in 1978, there was living quarters in the back. And we had people that actually lived there up until about 15 years ago. We had one individual live there for about 17 years, and there was a lot of benefit to that. We haven't had anybody that have lived there in a long time, and there's a lot of different aspects and reasons why behind it that there's not anymore. But those are now offices, and they're no longer bedrooms anymore. So we got rid of all the beds and moved desks in there and things like that. So now there's more administration that happens in there, but no. Secretly, there is one bed still in the building for just in case. It's in our printer room, it's set up, ready to go, but it doesn't get utilized very often. I've actually lived at the fire station for a while, back in about 10 years ago, but only for about 4 or 5 months. Anything else? All right, thanks guys, appreciate it. And cut.